In this session, you're going to hear from three expert individuals who have created effective team structures for project management. And we hope you will learn how you can make the course production more efficient, effective, and enjoyable. There will be plenty of opportunity at the end of this, at the conclusion of their comments, for an exchange of ideas, questions, and discussion. And I know we all have a lot to learn from each other. Much has been written about project management, which is the process and activity of planning, organizing, motivating, and controlling resources, procedures, and protocols to achieve a specific goal, and in this case, the development of a MOOC. The management literature identifies the primary challenge of project management is to achieve all of those project goals while honoring the constraints of scope, time, quality, and budget. But did you know that many great minds have weighed in on project management over the years? Perhaps the earliest insight comes from that Roman poet Ovid, when he wrote, "Add little to little, and there will be a big pile." Or the German writer Johann Wolfgang von Goethe mused, "Things which matter most must never be at the mercy of things that matter least." Or that American race car driver Mario Andretti, who said, "If everything seems under control, you're not going fast enough." And finally, perhaps the best bit of project management wisdom comes from Lewis Carroll in Alice in Wonderland, and I quote, "Begin at the beginning," the king said gravely, "and go on till you come to the end, then stop." We have three much wiser project managers here with us today, and you will find biographical information about them on the website, so I'm not going to go into detail, but I encourage you to read their biographies. They are a very esteemed panel. I want to make just a quick introduction, however. All of our panelists have been deeply involved in leading or managing, or both, the development and delivery of MOOCs at their individual institutions. Amy Bennett is the Director of Course Operations at the University of Pennsylvania, which is located in Philadelphia. Carol DeMeyer is Project Manager, Senior Learning Design Consultant at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And Jake Julia is he has two titles, Associate Vice President for Change Management and Associate Provost for Academic Initiatives at Northwestern University, which is located in Evanston, Illinois, outside of Chicago. But they have more than just MOOCs and project management in common. They all hail from parts of the United States that have been through a record-breaking winter of cold and snow. So no doubt they are very excited to be here in balmy London. Amy and then Cheryl and then Jake will each speak for roughly 5 minutes, followed by time for questions, and I know we'll have a very lively discussion. And they're just going to go in order. I won't get back up and reintroduce them, so I'm just going to turn it over to Amy to start us off.
Thank you for that. I had the pleasure of gloating to those folks back home that it was 70 degrees and sunny yesterday. So now that everybody has their second win for the afternoon, I thought I would start off with a little personal story of how I got introduced to MOOCs. So in 1998, I went to Penn for my second degree for an MBA, and I had a professor who really inspired me. And then I went back to Penn for a third time in 2012, and I had the same professor again. This time, instead of a business degree, it was for a design degree. And he said, "How would you like to be a TA for my MOOC?" Well, at that time, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what Coursera was. But I had the real fortune of being a TA for a course. So it was really exciting to have that kind of introduction and to be that deeply immersed. And I loved it, so now I'm doing it full-time at Penn, back in my alma mater. Now, before making this switch, I was in the corporate world, so don't hold that against me. And I was VP of operations for several companies, and I was responsible for project management teams around the world. So that meant project managers, client management, and launching new programs. So probably hired about 50 project managers over a span of maybe 15 years or so. So when it comes to Penn specifically, we've done a lot over the past year and a half or so, and it's hard to believe. And when you look at these numbers and you have a chance to reflect back, You realize how far you've come and how much you learned and how much you have yet to learn still. So just taking a snapshot of where we were about 18 months ago, we dove in actually pretty deeply, starting with 5 courses in that time frame. We do have 12 schools at Penn, which from a project management standpoint is interesting for us because I work in the provost office, and so we have a centralized function there. And in some cases, each of the 12 schools also have a piece of that function too. So we have to operate on a very highly coordinated and collaborative way. So now in the past couple months or so, and in project management, one quote that I heard from somebody was, as soon as you put up a project plan, it's wrong. And they've also said that in the budgeting process. So, but it's really true. And as soon as this slide is up, it's wrong because we are doing so many courses in a very rapid time frame. What that means is, though, is an extra care to be sure that we have things that we can be systematic about, that we can keep our quality high, too. And so that's one of the biggest challenges. So project management is not just about getting it done. It's about understanding what success looks like when you start, and then along the way, seeing how close you're coming to hitting your goals with that. So with this number of faculty, and the number of enrollments that we have, you can see the numbers are quite substantial. And what that means for us is that we want every student to have the same experience as every other student in terms of what we provide. So just looking at our portfolio of courses, you can kind of see in terms of the diversity of courses that we've offered. And that's been very important to Penn, was to do humanities, was to do engineering courses, math, Greek and Roman mythology and poetry, was to try all these different things on this platform and to engage students and actually faculty in a whole new way of teaching and learning. Now, from a project management standpoint, it's a little bit of that art and science. So what we do is we engage with faculty from the very beginning. We have a proposal process and a faculty advisory committee who reviews every proposal. From that, the ones that are approved, we go on and we manage the entire process. So we've put some things in place, such as a faculty manual, faculty resources on a web page. We support TAs. We have a wiki for TAs, and having been a TA, I know what they go through. So our approach is very proactive, and we want this to be a good experience. We want to be efficient with our faculty members' time. We want to set expectations, and again, that's a big positive thing to do in project management is because you're going to run into roadblocks. So control what you can control, and then have a plan to mitigate what you can. And so that's very much what we do. And throughout the process, then we have a feedback loop. So what we're trying to do is to take what we've learned in each course and apply it to the next one, and so on and so forth. So that's Penn's approach, and I thank you all for being here.
Good afternoon. Thank you for not going home. It would be a whole different experience if you were not here. So I appreciate you sticking it out. I'm Cheryl from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And for those of you who don't know where Madison is, we are in the upper Midwest of the United States. We are located on the shores of Lake Mendota. And we have 13 colleges and schools. We have a diverse student population of about 44,000 students. And in 2013 is when we dipped our toes into the Mooc space. We did so because we really just wanted to learn by doing. We wanted to learn for ourselves what the space would offer, what kind of affordances it would offer in terms of helping to inform our mission and contribute to our continual efforts to improve teaching, learning, research, and outreach on our campus. So to date, we have launched 4 Moocs, the 4th one launching just last week. And in the first 2 Moocs, we have a little over 1,500, we've awarded a little over 1,500 certificates of completion in our first 2 Moocs. So who in the room has, the representatives of your institution have launched at least 1 Mooc? How about 2 Moocs? 3 Moocs? regardless of the number, even if you did one, you should like congratulate yourself, because you know that it's a huge effort to do that. So if no one has congratulated you, I'm going to congratulate you right now. Congratulations. Okay, so different models. The story of the model at UW-Madison campus started with 3 individuals, which is Jeff Russell, our Dean of Continuing Studies, our Interim Vice Provost for Teaching and Learning, Chris Olson, and Linda Jorn, our Director of Academic Technology. This leadership team took our MOOC efforts and presented them to the Chancellor and the Provost's office. And also got faculty buy-in from faculty governance to student, faculty, and staff. And they also secured philanthropy funding for the launch of our first 4 MOOCs. So the structure of our MOOCs quickly grew into this highly collaborative cross-campus effort. And I'm just going to pause for like 10 seconds to sort of let you take this in. So this is really one of the strong positive outcomes of MOOCs at UW-Madison. New partnerships, new collaborations, bringing our campus together for the cause of innovation. This shows you that MOOCs don't happen just out of one unit on a campus, at least not on ours. It didn't happen just out of our design teams, regardless of how wonderful they are. It didn't happen because they have a project manager. It really is a cross-campus effort and a cross-campus success. So when looking at this structure, it helps us to think about how we might scale, how we might sustain, how we might become more efficient. So the hours that it's taken us for our MOOCs is anywhere between a little over 2,000 hours to about 700. That's the MOOC that just launched last week. And there's a lot of variables, of course, different media, different levels of personal learning that's happening. And we recorded our time in those 3 buckets: design, development, and support. And then as we move forward, we're recording our time into the other buckets that you see below. What we've found is that the time to produce these MOOCs really does align with the time that it takes to create first-time taught, media-rich, traditional online courses. They're pretty much the same. So what has been successful at UW-Madison is, of course, leadership, their support, but also their involvement. Our teams are very agile, and we draw on the expertise of cross-campus, across the whole campus. Communications, I would highly recommend bring somebody in really early in communications to help you communicate up, down, sideways, internally and externally. Community, offer community events so that you can bring campus with you on this journey. And evaluate, just evaluate, iterate. And expectations, set clear expectations on process and time commitments. Project manager, if you can get a project manager that's 100% and not an add-on to to already existing work. And then alignment, find out where MOOCs can align with your institutional mission. And I am out of time, so thank you. Grab my folder. Sorry.
Great. Thank you. So Northwestern University has what we would call a diversified distance online and blended strategy. A number of initiatives coming out of our schools, specifically especially from our School of Continuing Studies, which has a number of graduate fully online master's programs. We are engaged in an undergraduate 4-credit consortium initiative with called Semester Online, and then of course our partnership with Coursera. In terms of where we stand right now, we have our first cohort had 6 Moocs in it. I'm very pleased to say that an hour and a half ago, the last Mooc in our first cohort went live. Knock on wood, so far successfully. And as soon as we get back from London, we're going to be working on the development with our second cohort of 5 Moocs. So we're at a point of 11 right now. Our Moocs are selected through an RFP process conducted by our faculty distance learning work group, the fully vested faculty governance group. They hand off, they make their recommendations, they hand them off to us, and us is our coordinated service center. So this is a group, somewhat virtual group that's put together to support and oversee the development of our Moocs, really from that handoff all the way through the assessment process. The criteria for developing this group was our provost, in essence, demanding that we look at this as a partnership rather than a sort of service or he wanted to ensure that our faculty had a good experience. He didn't want it to be over bureaucratized. He wanted it to be nimble. He wanted it to be flexible, and he wanted to have the folks the decision makers, in essence, serving on this group so that things could be done quickly and effectively for our faculty as we went through. So we have our Vice President for Information Technology, who's actually up in our audience today, co-chairs this group with me, and it includes folks from our academic research technologies in IT. It includes folks from the library to help us on the copyright issues. Includes folks from our School of Continuing Studies on the development and design process, further IT staff on the technical development, and folks from our Searle Center for Advanced Teaching and Learning to help us in the assessment side of things as well. So it's a really nimble group. Sure. With both formal project management and oversight responsibilities. So on the project management side of things, we have very much a team approach where our academic and research technologies folks and our folks from the School of Continuing Studies work together. There are 2 teams that work together on the development process. Initially, both of the teams will meet with each faculty member, and they will. That's okay. Sorry. And they'll sit down and map out a plan for how the development's going to go. Depending on where the emphasis is, if it's more on the technology side of things or if it's more on the design side of things, a lead will be selected through that process, and that person will serve as a lead throughout the whole development process. Thank you. All right. It ends up being about 50-50. So about half the time it's the folks in the design and the School of Continuing Studies side, and the other half it's on the academic and research technology side. The process works very well, and it works well because we have truly a dedicated sense of a teamwork approach on both sides. And if there are any issues, they come to the central coordinated service group, and we address them. And again, when we have the people there that can make those decisions, which helps very much. In terms of policy development, it's really not totally accurate. We're responsible for coordinating policy development. So the Service Center works with the Office of General Counsel, and it works with the libraries. It works with the Budget Office. It works with our tech transfer folks on the royalty sides of things to coordinate policies for our Moocs to ensure that we're developing university-wide policies as we go through, and that we are thinking about it in a strategic sense versus a one-off sense. And certainly we place a lot of emphasis on assessment as part of the planning process as we go through. Our Moocs are funded centrally predominantly. Our schools do co-invest in some areas, but generally it's funding from the Provost's office that funds them. And then our group the Service Center has responsibility for final approval before a Mooc is uploaded. And that requires, I've heard the word partnership used by my colleagues, and it's very much a partnership. And just in terms of the issue of communicating effectively with faculty, we have developed this cohort model, and we treat them as a true cohort. They meet every 6 weeks as a group. They will go through, they will raise issues. One example was, in fact, concerns related to the Coursera CDA. The faculty didn't understand, why or what this was, and so when we got them together collectively, we could explain and work through, and then go back and work with Coursera actually to fix it. So from our perspective, I should say. So this cohort approach has really worked for us. And again, I think I'm running out of time, so I would be glad to answer any questions now. Thank you.
Thanks to our speakers. We purposely did short overviews because we wanted to really have a dialogue with you as co-speakers, I guess I could say. But before we do, we thought since it's getting near the end of the day, we'd do a little warm-up or wake-up, if depending on your level of jet lag, which I see some jet lag out there. And we just thought we'll take a minute and just, you could stand up, you could stretch a little bit, turn to somebody near you, grab somebody near you, introduce yourself, and then share either one barrier or challenge that you have experienced or you expect to experience in project management at your institution. And just take a couple minutes. Well, thank you for exchanging some challenges and some barriers. So now it's time to open it up for questions for our panelists or questions of each other or questions from the panelists to you. You may want to ask a question that was spurred by something that they said or something you were just saying to each other about barriers and challenges. And in our dialogue, hopefully we can find some answers to some of those things. So it's open. If you would introduce yourself and where you're from when you pose your question or make your comment. And it's being recorded, so we'll want to use a microphone as well. So who's first? In the back, Diane. Diane will bring the microphone back.
Hi, I'm Tyler Ritter, University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And I had a question about the RFP process because we started off that way. Now we're wondering if we should take a more intentional approach in terms of identifying particular topics or research, or if the RFP process is best. And I'm just wondering how that has worked out for others.
Yeah. I mean, I think we since we're in our second cohort, it's been very much an evolutionary process. The first cohort was who's interested and willing, and the second one was here's our criteria, we're going to review it, and we envisioned the third one being very much focused on sort of the strategic focus and strategic areas that we as a university would want to address through our Moocs. So the answer is yes, but I want to be very clear, we haven't done it yet, so but it's a good way to go.
We are just finishing with phase 1 and entering into phase 2 where we did have a call for proposals, and I would highly suggest, yes, do be intentional. We followed the same procedure pretty much, tapping faculty on the shoulder who we thought would be good instructors, and of course they are. We want to be more intentional and trying to align it with a specific institutional mission on our campus when we do a call for proposals and get a diverse representation of campus.
So I would just add to that, Penn does both. Most of our proposals come in through our call for proposals process as well. But we think about planning this on a macro level in addition to the micro level of the course. So we want all of our 12 schools represented, for example. So in some cases we will approach deans and gauge interest. And again, sometimes people come to us or people are asked. Again, it comes down to what you really have to have, though, is faculty engagement and willingness to do it and knowing what it takes to do it. So if it's an outgoing question, then that should be part of the conversation for sure. So.
Can I just say one more thing? So our call for proposal, our MOOC efforts is part of our campus-wide educational innovation efforts, which is out of the Chancellor's office and Provost's office. And the education innovation team, they will be reviewing our call for proposals that have been submitted and helping us work through who will go forward, who is in alignment with our criteria that we've developed for our MOOCs. And part of the EI core team, previous to when they get the reviews, we also have a committee that's reviewing them that's made up of our data analytics lead, our lead for design, some faculty members, and some deans as well on campus.
Sorry, I just have one more point. One of the key things about the proposal process is you get the faculty and the team with whom they're going to work, and also our team and the faculty reviewing it, is for them to think about the course in advance. So when we provide the proposal, it's not just so much fill out the document, then it's a yes or no response. It's look at other courses, browse Coursera, take a Mooc, so that you're familiar with the whole process and you know what you're getting into, and that you've thought about how to translate that. One of our proposal questions is how will you use what you do in the Mooc to change your classroom? And so we want to get that thinking going as upstream in the process as we can. So it has multiple purposes to go through a proposal.
Yes, please.
Can I speak like this? Do you want to microphone?
Yes. Thank you.
Following up on that, my name is Martin. This comes from the University of Sweden. So what do you do, even if the teams were quite well prepared and you would have worked for us and etc., but there must be a team that did not really realize how much work it would be to give a look in. How do you deal with that?
So again, since we've done 30 of them, we're learning a lot, and we do get the questions, how many hours is this going to take? And the answer depends, or here's the range. And so we do try to provide that range, so there's some expectation. Typically, we find that even the folks who are well prepared, you don't know what it is until you get into it. And so what we do, because we are on every MOOC, our team, the Open Learning team, is that we try to use that expertise to help minimize any anxiety around that. So for example, one of the things we know is one of the first things we do is schedule faculty time, because it's a very precious resource. That's one thing we literally do first. Another thing we do is we have a kickoff meeting, which happens after the proposal is accepted. And in that, we go through milestones. So in the next 3 months, we don't sort of bite off more than we can chew. In the next 3 months, here's the next thing you have to do. We have to think about the course page, we have to think about listing the course, and then it's a more manageable set of deliverables. While setting the expectations, you're going to need to find a TA in 2 months, so start thinking about that. We have a TA job description, so we go to that level in terms of checklists and planning. And some people want that level, and sometimes it's a little too detailed, so we pull back. So it's really also reading the faculty and the team that you have, and just listening and understanding sort of where they're coming from, and then tailoring the experience for them.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that we again, the best part of this whole experience is that we learn as we go. And so our second cohort of Moocs, as we're going through the development process and just getting ready to start, we've developed a new sort of timeline and trying to at least lay out generally the chunks of what's going to happen and when, so that they're aware of it. I would tell you that based on our first experience that you can communicate and communicate and communicate, and they're still not going to fully appreciate all the time and the effort and engagement that they're going to have to go in. And sometimes it's just being patient and going back and explaining. And again, you know, we have a really good team doing that.
Yes, please. Yes, go ahead.
So I just want to follow up, because I've been hearing this a lot from people this morning and today, that there's this growing concern about the use of resources and anxiety about the amount of work. And we keep emphasizing that there's lots of complicated things we do at universities. So I guess the challenge, what is your best simile to other work that you've done? Managing a MOOC, doing project management experience with a MOOC is like what else that you've ever done at a university or elsewhere?
Yeah, so I had responsibility for implementing a new financial system at the institution, and I think there are a lot of similarities, you know, in terms of that. So, but in terms of the detail and in terms of the need to really constantly reinforce, you know, this, it's a significant amount of time, well spent, I think, but.
Cheryl, do you have something to add?
I think for us it's really similar to our online course development and hybrid courses and how it relates to our overall education innovation efforts. One of the things that the challenges perhaps is, you know, trying to match faculty availability time with the time of our design teams. And if it's not working, we've had the support of our provost and dean of continuing studies to do a little bit of shoulder tapping to help align that time a little bit. But in terms of, we haven't really had a team that doesn't work. But again, the first time out, there's a lot of unknowns, and so it was just kind of like, you know, feet to the ground, and you put in what you need to put in that first time around, and then you adjust a second time.
So,
After you, Amy, sorry.
I was going to say, so project management is a discipline, and you can really apply it to most things. I mean, certainly there's the very simple means, and then there's the kind of complex project management, resource planning, and all of that. And I'm actually not a believer in that really intense, because you can get in the way of too many details. My team might disagree with me that I don't get into as many details, but so it really applies to everything. And I think the thing is to put the importance and the weight on it. We don't offer teaching relief for it. We do offer a set of reasons to do it, including financial. So we do offer that. But so it has to be something that they want to do. But then, as we've learned, so for example, we found that faculty, when they come into the studio, because you're not talking to a class of students and getting that two-way engagement, it takes longer in front of the lens. So we've built into the schedule up front is a rehearsal session. So they come in there, we tell them what to expect, what it's going to be like having the lights on them, and that reduces our time later. So there's things that we're building in earlier in the process, and that's a good practice. It does take some convincing, though, to say there are these things you have to do up front, but we promise you it will save you time downstream, and we do use that for planning purposes. So we have ratios between 1 hour finished content is 4 hours to prep, 2 to 3 hours filming, 2 to 3 hours editing. So you have to build all those kind of multipliers in.
Saw a hand in the back, yes. Very back. Sorry, Diane. She's giving her a workout.
Thanks. I'm Dan Connick. I work at a graduate school of education called Relay, New York. I saw your list of who's involved in the course. I saw your list of who's involved in the course, but I didn't see a hierarchy of decision making. And I wondered, for example, is the professor the ultimate decision maker, like in a rapid system, do they have a D? Or is it the person who has the best sense of adult online learning is the person who's going to convince them out of doing something? Maybe the script calls for them dancing on a 747 and you don't think it has pedagogical value. If that happens, who owns the content? I saw the process, but I didn't see the hierarchy of decision.
Yeah. So the faculty really do own the content, and it is absolutely a partnership. And if they were suggesting that they'd be dancing on the wings of a 747, I would do our best to dissuade them of that. And I'm guessing there would be some sort of a university policy that would negate that. So I think we'd be covered. In the end, so for our experience, we have had a lot of back and forth with our faculty throughout the process for exactly the sorts of things that you're talking about. And we really haven't had to be in that decision mode where, sorry, we're making the decision. I represent the provost on that committee, and in essence, am empowered to make a final decision on go live or not. I think that if truly we got to a point where there was an issue with a faculty member who felt that they were absolutely ready, and our group had made the decision, and I reflected that it wasn't, that we would go to the provost and the dean and sit down and do it. So that's really the process.
So we had, I think it was interesting because some of our faculty were not used to working with a design team, and so there was a learning process in terms of who's responsible for what and who does what. But at our Mooc kickoff meeting, we tried to get the design teams with our faculty together right away, discussing what are your hopes, dreams, fears, and really making that a collaborative process right from the get-go. I would agree, in the end, it's a faculty decision, but we really haven't had any huge major disappointments in terms of course design. In fact, it's just been a really positive experience for both our design teams, even the project manager, and our faculty.
Would you like to weigh in?
I was just going to say, you know, there's the spirit of experimentation too. So we do impose some quality recommendations because we want to showcase the thought leadership of our faculty. That being said, we also want it to be authentic to that faculty member and to the course content. So I would say actually if dancing on the wing of an airplane, if that was relevant to the course, we should think about it. So we shouldn't shy away from anything scary. That being said, we do provide a lot of directive feedback to the faculty, but also a lot of it is about having conversations. So it's not really sort of someone making an ultimate decision.
Right.
There's an ultimate decision at the provost level of courses we will or won't do, or if proposals are submitted without the right level of investigation behind it. But again, it's about trying things out too, I think. So we shouldn't shy away from things that we might try, and that has to be a discussion. And for that creativity to come out, I think we have to sort of have a discussion so that nothing's a surprise, nothing gets to the point of, is it a yes or no? I mean, it might be go, no go from a time, date standpoint, but from other things, it really has to be more of a conversation.
Yes, over here in front. I'm sorry, I should take one, back, middle, front, back, middle, front. Here, oh, right here.
Hi, I'm Stella from Queen Mary University of London. And this is a question for all panel members really, and I'm interested, since you have a proper project management approach to developing and launching Moocs, how much would you say the range is? How much does it cost to develop a 6-week MOOC, for instance? So I know you mentioned that you get your funding centrally, Jake, but I just wanted to pause the panel.
Yeah. You want to go first? Yeah. I would say that the average cost probably costs between $40,000 and $50,000 US for our Moocs, basically. And we do have a set of budget parameters that we work with the faculty for. And so, I mean, again, we work with, to the point Amy made earlier, just an amazing creative group of faculty. And they have some really neat ideas about things they want to do from a technological standpoint, from a programmatic content standpoint. And we really work with them to try to accommodate them within their budgets. One of our faculty members wanted to have a social networking component, and another really wanted a branding expert to be part of this. And so, if there are reasonable expenses, to the point Amy made earlier, we'll have a discussion. The key thing is not to find out after the fact from a project management standpoint. And we've been really good at saying, if you have these issues, come and talk with us and let's discuss. And so having that dialogue really does help.
So we don't have exact figures on the cost of our Moocs yet, but if you remember the organizational structure image that I had, part of it is because in my organization, Dual Communications, we're used to tracking time. We have a culture of tracking time, but that's not the case all across campus. So when we work with libraries, when we work with IRB, when we have communications, they're not always tracking time for Moocs, even though it's part of making a MOOC pilot successful. But in terms of the production of a MOOC, again, we've found it to align quite well with the same production costs as what it costs to teach or produce a traditionally 15-week online course.
Again, it's a little bit of a range, so it depends. I mean, there are figures that sort of emerge after doing this a while, but you want to think about what the learning outcomes and what the experience is for the student. So we try to bring everything back to that, and what's the added benefit of doing X versus Y. So again, we don't want to have a bad production value. There's some minimum level, but we also have a lot of diversity in not only the types of courses, but the approaches we take. The design course that for which I was a TA was called our cooking show, because it's sort of like here's the prototype, and here's what it looks like. And that works very well in that environment, and that was something the faculty member filmed completely himself, and it works perfectly. We have other things that are in a lab, or we have nursing students, for example, working on dummies that do all kinds of things, and that requires more complex camera work, but it's the way to show that in that setting. So for us, it's what are we trying to accomplish, and then looking at the prices. We also use a lot of different resources on campus. So we're able to cost things out, and there's some maybe minor competition among different groups that we can use across campus to try to be competitive in terms of the pricing. But plan more, probably double than you first think when you first embark into it.
And
you don't have the good news after. Or if you have a budget, be really clear on how that breaks down and communicate that in advance, because you're never going to hit it perfectly, but if you're checking in on that, because there can be some surprises in terms of things like video and equipment and time, so that can add up very quickly.
Yeah, it's really useful to have an idea, because we're at the point where we're going out and getting funding. We're thinking it's probably going to cost us about £25,000, but we don't know. We haven't tried. We've spoken to a lot of people, and I'm interested in what you can say.
So there is a lot of information that's starting to come out in terms of the hours that it takes to produce. So maybe you could take those hours and translate that into, at your university, what would 2,000 hours cost? But again, one might be 2,000 hours. We have one that's probably going to come under 1,000 hours, and it's just the depends on the richness of media that's used, the personal learning environment that's, how personal do you get with the learning activities. But if you kind of think about it on an hour basis, maybe you can translate that then into your own campus costs.
In the back, of course. I'm really sorry, Diane.
Terry Hatch from the State University of New York System Office. I'm just curious, for those of you that have a pretty good history of traditional online, and if you've taken a look at the data, and if you've looked at the learning outcomes of the Mooc, and specifically the videos in the Mooc versus your more traditional online delivery, which is, I assume, not as video-centric, have you learned anything from that?
So are you asking if there's learning differences between using videos or maybe a more heavier text-based MOOC?
Yeah, we're talking about the production cost primarily of the video. A lot of it's the production cost of the video. So how does that compare to a more traditional text-based approach? And are we seeing the value of that? Or are you seeing the value of that?
Well, we are just in week 2 of our more of a text-based approach MOOC, which we're actually calling a MORE, which is a massive online resource. But again, I think it really depends on your audience. Like the audience for this particular MOOC or MORE is really one that wants a text-based and not the media so much. This particular instructor is going out to areas that does not have broadband. And so the heavier text base with graphical enhancement instead of video, it works for him, it works for his audience.
So I would add to that, what video can do for you, and there are ways to do video without it costing a lot, relatively speaking. But video allows a field trip. So we have a faculty who had the idea to go to Whole Foods and talk about the topics there. And so we did a tour with the manager of that Whole Foods, which is a fresh grocery store, kind of a niche grocery store with many organic products. And so there was back to school and Halloween, so there were different display cases, and they had a person who did the fish who just came in from the boat, and the person behind the cheese, but then other displays were based on color and different things. And so we were able to take the camera around and show those different things. And in a classroom, you're somewhat a little bit more limited. So it was almost like a real-time interaction. The other thing that video, so it's not just about transporting your text-based class or textbook into a course. It's really reconceiving, and this is why the proposal process is important. It's reconceiving how the learner's going to learn. And that's really the sort of end goal, and it takes a while to get there. We're still working on it. But so you can transport people to different countries too. So we have a Designing Cities course, and in the classroom and even online, the examples used were from Philadelphia, where we're based. So it was this city, and there's a lot of rich examples there. But now we had 2,000 examples from around the world of local cities. And so by using video and the different things that you can leverage via this format, there's a lot of different ways to teach. So again, it comes back to not just a translation to an online format, just thinking about a totally new way of delivering content.
Other questions? Yes, please. It really is back and forth, but that's okay.
I'm Bill Twine from the University of New South Wales. Just wondering if anyone's doing anything that's not really kind of lecturer-centric, like a talking head to camera, because that seems to be what a lot of stuff is, and I'm wondering why, and what else other people might be doing.
Any of our panelists want to comment on that?
Yeah, I'd like to see us move away from the word lecture. And one thing we say in the kickoff meetings is we don't want the talking head with a PowerPoint slide. Because again, that is just transporting something and it's not new and innovative. So one of the courses, we have a calculus course that's completely done in animation. And the idea is that it's not only math, it's math applied in the real world, and to get students interested from an earlier age and get into these technical fields. And so what the animation does, it's drawing the learner in. And one thing about the video format is they can pause it, they can watch it multiple times, but it's this animation. So there's the figurehead in front to just introduce the concept, and then it goes in a completely different way. So that's very much the direction we're looking to go, not lectures, not sort of that one directional talking. Yeah, and again, there's different things you can do. So there's project-based work, and that can be demonstrations. So we're doing a lot with, we're filming just different kinds of demonstrations and lab work. That's a lot of where we're going. We're filming some robotics videos, and so you can actually show what happens, and you can change the conditions on the fly. And so that's much more valuable than someone telling you. So we believe in kind of the show approach. So absolutely where we want to go.
But it has, to the earlier question about the faculty's sort of right to use the methodology they want, we've had some very innovative faculty do some very different things. I don't know if anyone's seen the Google Mooc that Owen Youngman from our journalism school did. And one of our engineering professors did something with, related to lab work and a lot of different things. And yet we also have faculty that want the traditional. They want to be in front of the camera. They want to feel like they're teaching a class like they always do, and it's a challenge. But again, in the end, we are partnering, and so to the question earlier, this is one of the assessment points of our first set of Moocs. Will be exactly that, trying to get the feedback in terms of what people reacted to and why, so that we can help our future cohorts of faculty to be as innovative as possible.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get some data back from the Mooc that we just launched last week, because that is the text-based approach for that particular Mooc. And we really the design teams had to really think about how to chunk out, information so that it's digestible and put it in visually appealing ways for the audience. And we were very intentional about not doing talking heads, but we do have videos. And so our anthropology professor, he's in Africa, he's doing a dig in Africa. And we go to the site of the professors, of the teachers, instead of bringing them to our studio.
One of the ways, and this also gets at the financial piece too, is that we typically tell, when we work with faculty, we talk in the beginning about there's kind of the core foundational things, and they may be sort of more like the lecture format. And then there's all the other things you can add in. And of course it means time, but we literally say to faculty, take a video, take your phone wherever you are in the world, and over the next 6 months that we're planning it, 3 to 6 months, if you have an interesting conversation, if you're in an interesting place, video it. And so that sort of raw footage we think works really well as a supplemental to some of these settings. So it makes it interesting. We bring in a lot of experts, we do a lot of interviews. We have students who ask questions and are involved. So for example, in our modern poetry, it's a discussion with students. And that works really well. So I think, the caution is that being innovative does tend to translate to more time, but it doesn't necessarily have to. There are ways to get around that and still be visually appealing.
Yes, please. There we go, and right across
You're welcome.
the aisle.
So Amy, this might be primarily directed at you. I'm wondering about how the project management process changes when you rerun a course.
So
This might be, you guys might want to listen.
we have 2 courses that are in their 4th running, actually. And so one of the things, the good news is that for the first time, you have lots of intensity around it. But by each subsequent run, you've learned more and you've worked out the kinks. So there's positives and negatives to both. So in rerunning the course, it's really very much about what worked and what didn't work. And that happens almost during the process of running it the first time. So one of the things that we kind of scratch our heads about is when we film the promotional video, it's one of the first things we do. But then as you go through the course and the faculty has done it, you kind of want to do it at the end, but then it's sort of too late. So we do actually do some promotional videos over because it's a better reflection of what the content is because it's been created. So that's just one example. The other thing too is you want it to be, we've heard the term autopilot a lot, and so we want to be careful of that, I think. So you want to plan for, we feel that TA assistance, TA involvement is very important on every single run. We've also used community TAs with Coursera, and those are folks that have done well in the course in a previous session, and they can handle social media, they can handle the forums. So that's been one way to sort of alleviate the workload. But so pretty much you want to balance having things look stale. So for example, some courses have today's date, and that helps the students stay on track, and it's April 1st, and here's what you have to do, but then you have to change it each time. So you have to go back into the course and make sure you've hit everything and check all the links and everything like that. So you want to balance that with being fresh and new. So you really have to think about that. Running a course the second and multiple times is a lot simpler, though, sure, than the first time. So, but it's important to build into that second run a chance to improve upon things and set those expectations that you may want to do certain things over or add certain things. And going into it, if there's time-bound things, so we had a U.S. Thanksgiving video, and that didn't play when we offered the course 6 months later, so we had to take that off. So you want to think about some of those things going in, and then also what the faculty time that you have is, and what amount of engagement they want with it, because it can be from 0 to as much as it was in the first run. So that's sort of how we kind of take a look at it.
Thank you.
Another question? Comments?
I have a question.
Okay.
Can a panelist ask a question?
I think so.
Okay. Actually, I have a question for all of you. Would anybody be willing to share what you heard in terms of the sharing that you did earlier? What was one main challenge that you have on your university? Would anybody be willing to share what you heard or what you said? Yes.
Generally, I see the problem in many institutions. I see many different problems, but I think one of the major problems is this sort of design, the project management team does not even exist in the first place. Now, obviously, there's a lot of resources, there's a lot of planning, and a lot of expertise. And this is like something that you and your teams can provide to the teachers who are asking for help. Now, is there any plan on maybe cooperating with Coursera and maybe extending the help to other universities, possibly, or any sort of possibility of partnership, so other universities can also tap into this potential?
You can.
One thing I do want to say that in hiring dozens of project managers over the years, I never look for the ones with the project management professional credential, and it's a very hard thing to get. I look for sort of attitude. So project management, while it's difficult and is a discipline, it's really about knowing how to move things along, and if someone has the right attitude and a good attitude and is focused in the right way, it's something that anyone can take on. That being said, Penn puts pretty much everything that we do out on the web. So I'll be happy to talk with you after and give you our website. You can start at provost.upenn.edu. But we make everything open because we believe that the MOOC, the openness is truly, we're very transparent. So we put our proposal template out there for anyone to see. We put pretty much, I guess, everything, all the templates and things that we have because we want it to be a good experience. We want to build Moocs and share the learning that other institutions have, and we're always happy to talk to anyone about how we've done things and share templates and processes and all of that. So,
yeah, I would agree, and I think in terms of the materials and the processes, unequivocally yes. I think though that one of the differences that I've seen and heard here and last year at Philadelphia is that every institution has its own culture as well, and I think a really effective process really takes into consideration the faculty culture, the overarching culture. And so I think it's a little bit difficult sometimes to simply take a template and apply it to another institution. Certainly, the processes would work anywhere, but the cultural elements of it are really important, I think, for its success.
And I don't know if you've done this or not, but I would just encourage you to also reach out to Coursera because they do have, we have support at wisconsin.edu. And they've been very responsive anytime that we've had a question come up.
Any other threads or themes that came up when you had your discussions on barriers or challenges that you're willing to share? Back there, 3/4 of the way.
Hi, my name is Justin from Duke University. And I was having a conversation with someone from Michigan as well, and we both were talking about the difficulty of scaling this production process. That right now, when you have 2 or 3 or 5 or even 10, it's not so bad for all of the productions to go through some group of people, but if you talk about multiplying that by 10 more, at what point do you overwhelm the production team that you have in place? So I guess this might also be more relevant to Amy, but as you build more and more courses, how do you think about supporting and producing that next magnitude?
So it's a challenge for sure. One of the things, we talk about on this panel, project management, is that project managers don't actually do anything. So it's a coordination effort. And so what we've done over time is we've said, hey, we trust these people in our video department and they've reached out to faculty versus we have a very small team who in the beginning would schedule every meeting and go back and forth. So now we've built those relationships over time. So that piece takes us less time. So we've sort of delegated that piece. We still, again, always want to make sure that we have the quality and that, we're all ambassadors for our faculty and for our courses. So that always has to play a role in that, is making sure that we don't just crank things out in a machine, that we don't kind of take a look, that it's, so as we've done more and more courses, there are a lot of things that have taken us like 0 time that took us a lot of time before. So I think you'll find there's a lot of economies of scale when it comes to doing more courses. Part of it is about when you're scheduling them all, and you may choose to separate courses. You may want to have some launching at the same time, and that is a little tougher to coordinate, but if you're doing any promotion for the courses, there may be a way to kind of bundle them together. So it's a little bit of a balance, but I think generally we haven't really grown our team. One thing we do is we have undergrad students who help us with some of the technical work that's kind of repetitive for all of our courses, and that gives them a great opportunity to work on courses, and they've been great. So we've had a few students who are undergrads, they can stay with us a few years, and it's been a model that's worked really well for us. So I would experiment and use the different resources that you have and that Coursera provides you, and you'll find that there's sort of a lot of help there. And that's where I definitely agree with your point about translating documentation, but I think if you use some of this as a starting point, you might say, okay, this will work for us, this won't, and in our university, maybe we have to think about it this way, so it's a jumping off point.
Yeah. That's a good point. I think it's a very fair, I think you raise a very fair point, and coming back to a couple of the earlier questions, the assessment, for us, the assessment of each of these cohorts is going to be very important. So what are we reaching university goals? Are we getting the bang for the buck, as it were, for our faculty in terms of what they're looking for? Are there revenue streams out there that could be utilized to support this? I mean, there are just a lot of open questions as we sit here right now. Hopefully next year or the year after we'll be sitting here with the answers to. But I think that's a very core question that we think about a lot as well.
Yeah, I think with scaling in terms of production support, I think for us moving forward, we probably might want to look at, right now we have a full 100% design team, production team that work with our faculty. We have very little faculty producing their own video. But what might that look like if they were? And then we would have to front end that with more faculty training and support on, what are they going to do in order to keep our branding and our image that we're hoping for. So it's kind of a, what you do at one end, you might have to compensate at another end.
Another question? If not, I have one, which might be a nice concluder here. You've had all these folks out here at different stages, probably, of approaching Moocs. Maybe some haven't done any, some have done many. But would you each give your best piece of advice for someone just starting out?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I guess my best piece of advice would be to really think of it as a partnership with your faculty. They are the drivers of the Moocs, and sometimes it's so easy to get caught up in program management and project management and the process that it's easy to lose sight about the core work and what it's doing. And so that my counsel would just be to kind of always keep that in mind as you move forward. I think it's really important.
I think mine might also be in terms of partnership, but in partnership across campus. Make sure that it aligns with the institutional mission, because if it doesn't, why are you doing this? Does it bring value to your campus? And so if you can align it with your institutional mission, get cross-campus support from the chancellor, or whatever the chancellor is at your university, the equivalent, all the way through campus. Try and get cross-campus support.
I would say two pieces. One is flexibility. It would be nice for us to say each MOOC costs X, it takes this amount of time, etc. But really the faculty will be have different viewpoints about how they engage with the course. So each one will have its own level of differences. So I would say be flexible, and along with that, it's about relationship building. So we can have all the templates and processes that we want, but sometimes we act as moral support for the faculty. We're there just because we're a familiar face that they've been through the process with. They know we're not going to let them down, or we're going to do whatever we can to be there to make sure things go smoothly. We care about the students. So I think that, along with your relationships around campus, are really important to, address all things we do.
Thank you all. At the beginning of the session, I said this session would hopefully give you some ideas for more efficient, effective, and enjoyable production and project management. And I think our three speakers have really generously shared their wisdom, their experience, and their insights with all of us. So help me join me and help celebrate their contribution.